You're looking good?
Or he didn't even look up to say that. Looking good there, huh?
He's a typical man. Typical man. Welcome, Professor Nanda. This is the Discover Your SecondAct Podcast.
When it comes to women's solidarity, I have pretty much felt that women are each other's best friend. This question about women being each other's enemies also is a very typically socially conditioned question. Men are also each other's enemies. The biggest wars have been fought between men over property. So we don't discuss that. When you are having conversations and somebody says something which is not politically correct and which is sexist, I'm going to shoot it down and I'll give you 10 reasons why it shouldn't be so. Feminism is about equality. It's definitely not about being radicalizing to the effect that we don't want men. We are looking at equality between women and men and other genders. There should be no discrimination, whether it is between classes, between castes or between genders. Feminism talks about masculinity and femininity, and it says masculinity is also social conditioning, that men should protect the family, that they should not cry. That's why the men who are not like that are seen as outside the circle of so-called men. So patriarchy, which is the overarching framework, it also discriminates against men.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is the Discover Your SecondAct Podcast Season 4. And I think this podcast series is going from being just wonderful to being amazing now, because the guests which are coming here have some incredible stories and incredible lives to share. Today, I have Professor Bijayalaxmi Nanda. She just doesn't look, but is truly a principal of the most beautiful women's college in Delhi, in the Delhi University, called Miranda House. And when I met her, I literally had to pinch myself to really believe it that she was the principal. They say once a teacher, always a teacher. And that is what she brings to the table, that she's a learner for life. They say if you're teaching something, you become a learner for life. And the more that I saw her and spoke to her, the more I believe she truly is. So welcome, Professor Nanda. This is the Discover Your SecondAct Podcast. Thank you for meeting me and being in my life suddenly. And I don't know how I would have missed not meeting you in this life, because truly you inspire.
Thank you so much. It's really a privilege to be here with you. And I look forward to this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Professor Nanda, this platform is all about where people have nudged themselves out of their comfort zones. Second act, as I say, is a metaphor of breaking some barriers, pushing yourself out of, something which is like given to us in the first act. And we truly believe in making the destiny of, the life that we believe in or we want to live, kind of a thing. I know that you started with being a teacher at Miranda House and then gradually became a principal. But my curiosity is more than that, because when I hear you, you're a true feminist, and now being all surrounded by women, for the last 30 years of your teaching, how does that feel? I mean, have you transitioned being a woman from the last 30 years to now?
Well, I think we are always undergoing some transition, but it's actually quite an honor to be part of Miranda House. I taught there. Now I'm still teaching there for 30 years and more. And pretty much whatever I have learned, I've learned from that college. It is a leading college of not just of University of Delhi, but of India. We have been ranked, for the last 7 years as a national institutional ranking framework by the Ministry of Education.
Oh, wonderful.
For 7 times as the best college in the country amongst colleges. So it is pretty much a legacy and dynamic leaderships before me. I mean, I'm just one of those. We don't rest on our laurels. But what I can say about Miranda House and what it taught me since I started young as a teacher there was that it taught me that we can all belong, irrespective of our diversities, irrespective of the kind of backgrounds we come from. So that was a learning. I learned it from my peers, from teachers who were there. And many of those teachers were actually very well-known feminists themselves.
Really? At that
Yes,
time?
yes.
Wow.
So and even before that, I mean, I met some of the stalwarts there. So you had Dr. Uma Chakravarti, who wrote on gender and history. You had Manju Dalmia, then,
Oh,
who was a
yeah.
writer. And there were others also who may not have been so well known, but they were writers like Archana Verma, many writers in the Hindi department, in the English department, very politically active women who were teachers. So I learned a lot from them. But going beyond that, since I came from Odisha and Hindi was not my first language, so to say, I mean, I could speak a spattering of Hindi at that point. But yes, English one could. But I learned a lot more than just Hindi. I learned that, whatever your background may be, wherever you come from, in order to be, in a particular position where you would be taken more seriously as a teacher. At that point, it was just being as a teacher. And I was very young, and I probably passed off for one of the students
Yeah.
then.
Even now, by the way.
No, that's so
Even
sweet
by.
of you. So I think that was my first. To be a teacher, to be taken seriously in the classroom was important. I was teaching third-year students, so it was difficult. But I feel that a large part of my confidence came from the fact that I listened. I listened to
Oh.
my students and I came prepared for the lectures. I had a knowledge base, but more than the knowledge base, I didn't judge my students. I listened to them. I felt, because I was closer in age group to them, I felt closer to them. And in the process of being loved by your students, you gather a lot of confidence. So I would say my first learning is that, which I also learned from the women's movement, that not the love of power, but the power of love.
Oh, so nice. So well put. And I'm just wondering why they didn't make principals like you in our times. I would be in love with you at that time. I'm sure that there was a lot of fan following for you as well. And wasn't.
I wouldn't call it a fan following, but yes, I did get along a lot with my students because they are always looking for a kind of a
A
figure,
friend
friend
also.
figure, or slightly older, peer mentor, they call it now. So I did feel loved by them and appreciated. I still find that amongst young people. I wouldn't say that there are no principles like that. Personally, Dr. Meenakshi Gopinath from Lady Shri Ram College
So she
used to
was
have.
quite a principal, by the
Well,
way.
to some of us, she was a role model. But having said that, I never set out to be an authority figure. So perhaps it helped me because I learned it through the ropes of teaching and being closer. Because, in the department when I joined, most of my colleagues were at least 10 years apart from me. I mean, the youngest in the department then was 10 years apart, and my students were 5 years apart. So I found it easier to get along with the
Yeah.
students. So it taught me. I was also a resident tutor at
Oh, okay.
Miranda House with the students in the hostel. So I learnt a lot. I also got very close to people who were working with the women's movement besides college, and pretty much found my world there, the Center for Women's Development
Oh,
Studies.
so nice.
Then there was Veena Mazumdar. Then there was also Center for Advocacy and Research, the well-known journalist then, and of course somebody who led advocacy on gender issues, Akhila Shivadas.
Yes.
Then of course the most famous Kamla Bhashin, the feminist. So
Yes.
these were mentors.
Oh,
I
so
learned a
lovely.
lot from them. I learned to be part of campaigns, of movements. And I think I would say, there is a lot of greatness to who I am, but having a certain epistemic humility always helps us.
No, but tell me, I mean, from the image of a principal who's supposed to be authoritative, like you said, or a tyrant, I would say, in the other way, and especially university. School is something still, I would say, with the gap that we have, we don't take that chance. But,
Right.
in university, you're also dealing with adults. And so you're being friendly, approachable, somebody, you could smile at and not, they did anything like that come in your way? Did people take advantage of it as well, including students?
So, when I joined, and it is only when I was in my 25th year that I was offered to be the vice principal. I thought I was going to do it for 2 days or 2 months. So that's
Really? Why?
probably how I thought. It's nice, maybe I won't, exist in this space for too long. I mean, not metaphorically 2 days. So I thought once somebody comes in, but when she retired, when she superannuated, the former principal, and I came to the chair, that's when COVID happened.
Oh.
And pretty much the whole world told me that you just needed empathetic leadership. You needed to be more sensitive to the needs of people. And it taught me in a very strange sort of way that you could be the wrong person in the right job, or you could be the right person in the job that's meant for you. So just being able to create empathy, leadership was very important. But yes, not having boundaries can be, in the beginning, that used to be an issue for me. Like, I didn't know where, and you can't give away all your energies like that.
So true.
So I started creating some kind of boundaries, which is important for a position like that. But I don't think I did that very consciously. I put my trust in people, and young students are pretty much, they have a good head on their shoulders, and they're pretty level-headed. They know their boundaries. And the people who want to push it, one had to be assertive on those matters. So you also rediscover yourself
Absolutely.
in the process.
Rediscovering is all about
Yes.
second act, I say.
Right, right.
All right. Tell me, when you started to be in groups of women empowerment, let's say, or re-establishing women's rights or understanding women in a certain way, being a feminist, how was it at home? Did they like think that what's wrong with her? Is she turning into a rebel? Is she like, not doing the typical things women are supposed to do? Maybe, that she'll empower or, sit on our heads at home. Did anything like that happen?
Well, I come, obviously, we are three sisters. My
Okay.
mother passed away very early. My father is a feminist himself. He was Secretary Government of India as Health Secretary, but he's pretty much steeped in the rights-based approach. And he taught me some of the gender I know. So I don't think I faced any of that in my natal family, so to say. But it is only when you start, when the marriage business comes up and you come in and you are part of a...
Yes.
So, I didn't learn feminism through texts like they did in University of Delhi. I was in Utkal University, and feminism was not so much a coursework.
Okay.
But I believe that in from where I come from, which is Orissa, there is far more gender equality than I looked at when I saw the patriarchal
wonderful.
North. So here I did feel a difference in public dealings, in the way people would look at women, the way they would expect a woman to behave. So those were issues. With my marriage, it was a marriage of friends. We were friends before we got married. So, but I remember, because I had read so much of the feminist texts, I remember setting kind of a understanding, if you get married, I'm also going to take care of my dad as you will take care of your family. So I must say that must have been tough on my partner, because his social conditioning must have been different, but he was sensitive to understand that. And right now,
Very
my
nice.
father and my spouse and me, we share a home.
Oh.
So
Not so unreal now, but those
right.
days,
No,
yes.
no, and that happened just after my marriage, because my father, since my mother's not there. So yes, it's like my daughter always said that I feel I see a lot of reverse discrimination. So it can happen that you can have a very empowered house. But yes, I always have to say something. I always disagree on matters, and I pretty much cannot laugh at the sexist jokes.
Yeah,
So,
true.
so those are tough ones.
Yeah.
In the family business, when you are having conversations and somebody says something which is not politically correct and which is sexist, I'm going to shoot it down and I'll give you 10 reasons why it shouldn't be so.
Wow.
So that's a difficult one.
Great. I want to dedicate this episode also to students of today or younger generation, and to parents who are struggling with also, people
Right.
who are very focused, strong-headed individuals that we have now,
Right.
rather than our generation, which was still very experimenting to say, okay, यहाँ नौकरी मिल गई, बहुत अच्छा हो गया, ये तो मैंने कभी सोचा ही नहीं था. So when I got into Lufthansa, I was like, oh my goodness, who gets Lufthansa? Like it was like
Right.
the whatever. Today's generation is about, yeah, so what's the big deal? Like, yeah, but I have bigger aspirations. And you've been seeing the transition in 30
Right.
years. So what is your first hand into what's going on, especially in the case of girls?
Yes, so 30 years, right?
yes.
So there are students. If I look at my first batch of students who are the same age as you are, so
Yeah,
if I look
literally.
at them, I see them, having really walked the path as so to say, to steer in gender equality and the way. But the college, not just me, I mean, I was a teacher there. The college gave them a certain identity, which is about equality, seeking equality. So they have been able to do that. On a humorous note, I saw some of my students who used to have these conversations with me about equality. They would used to go to their parents. So their father used to say, "Don't have all these conversations with Nanda ma'am," is what they used to call me. So I remember that used to be, but those young people did a lot. Like their struggles were much bigger. Now parents have understood about gender equality. I see a difference there, but it's not like it's a one story. If you come to Miranda House or you go to any college in University of Delhi, the diversity is huge. So you might, and there's class, there's caste, there's community, there's disability, so many intersectionalities. So you will find that while there would be a certain set of parents who are already there, there are others who are struggling to be there. And you might find a rural based parent being far more gender sensitive and gender equal. You have young people coming from Haryana. Their parents have just maybe some land in the village, and they're putting all their energies behind their daughters. That was not a possibility 30 years
so
back.
true, so
That's
true.
quite amazing. That jump has been amazing. But yes, the struggles are there. I would like to say through your podcast is that parents should listen to their children and have patience, that they are also it's a transforming world. The opportunities are different, and the social media has its pros and cons. So the young people are going through a lot more than we used to go in. For us, pretty much, I think you put it very well. Like we were more adaptive.
Yes.
We said, okay, if not this, then that. But they
Yeah.
have so many options, and then they feel they haven't reached there. By the time they're 25, they want to be somebody.
So
We were pretty okay with not being anybody. Even till now, I don't think we are in that race. So that's there. It's a struggle for them. And parents have to be patient. They have to listen, and they have to be, holding their hands through this process.
So, being a educationalist, if you had to change something today for the better of the generation that is, what would you do?
That's a good question, but it's a tough one to answer. What is it that I would like to change? I think the national education policy has been trying to do that, to give them a basket of choices so that they are able to choose more in terms of the courses they want to do. So if it's skill enhancement they want to do, or they want to move forward to be entrepreneurs, or they want to take a break and explore other things. So it's all there. If you take a look at the national education policy framework, it's there. But going beyond that, I would like to see that every young person is surrounded with a set of mentors. They could be peer mentors. So they should have a set of people who are able to guide them through that process.
cool.
I think many of us still require that. Whatever age group you are in, you still need someone to tell you, okay, am I doing it the right way? So just having that set. So if I could change something within the system, is that I wouldn't have the exams come too quickly, and the space for that kind of interaction is limited. So maybe a little more space to create a more empathetic leadership program for these young
Very
people,
nice,
to
very
have a
nice.
network for them so that they can lean back, they can learn.
So
So
nice.
that pressure, if I could take away, but you have to take all of that together.
Yeah. So, but my question was more towards like, like we are never taught life skills.
Yes.
We are never taught how to really navigate life. We are never taught emotional intelligence. We are never taught vulnerability. So these are some things that we are not exposed to at all.
Right.
And because I do so many corporate interventions, and we do programs when people are at 30s, 40s, 50s, and then expect, oh, but you should just be vulnerable now. But we have no exposure to that.
Absolutely.
And we are not empathetic, we are not taught that, like you said. So what could maybe universities or educational system bring in, which could be towards life?
So, first we have to train the people who are doing these courses, like the teachers.
Yes.
Because we have to unlearn a lot. Possibly because I have done so much of, reading feminism. I taught human rights, gender and environment. I was very lucky to learn through the papers I taught. I taught political theory. So there was always a dynamism. So, just the things that you talked about, the life skills that one needs, or to be open, to be more vulnerable, that was a part of my learning. But I don't think it's a part of learning of every teacher in the
So
university.
true.
So that training is very, very necessary. In the university, there is right now a program called the Art of Happiness,
Oh,
and
there is.
there is a course that they will be offering soon. It's called the Science of Happiness, looking at
So nice.
neuroscience. So these are interesting things, but the readiness of the faculty which is teaching it, or the openness to accept that, so that needs to be developed. Yes, vulnerability is a tough one, especially if you have always focused on competitiveness. So being vulnerable, being sensitive, creating a kind of a reflection like that, it is possible also through the assessment systems. So if you are going to look at the assessment system in such a way that somebody who is doing a teamwork and is able to bring out vulnerabilities and is sensitive, you are going to then say that this is the best student in the class, or this
So
student who
nice.
reached out did great. So there is a scope within the system now, as I can see it. I mean, I come from a generation which suffers from the disease of hope. And so I think there is scope, but we are also not trained. And that is where people like you, who have trained in the corporate world, can bring some of these learning. Because the corporate world, after reaching a particular point of time with profit motive and the rat race or whatever, has come to realize that it has to stop there. Maybe those learnings can be brought. So this kind of a approach would help us.
Beautiful. And I'm glad that I think there is an openness to, now
Yes.
embrace it as well. There was no scope of doing it when we were studying. It was
True.
very bracketed to say political science honors करो, English honors करो, ये करो. ये सारे courses थे भी कहाँ? Courses भी नहीं, मतलब ये format ही कहाँ था?
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
कि even if you wanted to choose something for even like a evening class or something, just for my enhancement of my life, there was nothing available.
Absolutely.
It was,
And
yeah.
it
So,
wasn't there and there was no scope. But the point is, you have teachers who have never thought of it. So they are finding it difficult. So there is what I call a lead and lag. So there is a lead in terms of the way in which courses are coming in the way in which you can ambitiously think. But you need to have been exposed. So I am very lucky and fortunate that I did a number of other things beyond my teaching. I dabbled with the world of campaigns, with the movements, with creative works, with writing stories for films. So I did such a lot of multiple exposure that helped me learn. So for every teacher, that's not the story.
But
So
that's why you are so highly self-motivated, and that's why you're the recipient of Second Act Awards
thank you
for
so much.
women.
That's again an honor and privilege to look at that award.
No,
And
seriously, we need people like you,
right. And
really.
it's the acknowledgement. I mean, I turned 56 this April. So the acknowledgement that there's a whole life ahead of you and you need to do far more. And you see, as professors, we retire at 65. So I have a long way in my career that way. But beyond that also, to be able to think, and there's so much of learning. So to keep that child in you alive to learn. So I'm pretty impressed by Second Act, the thought of it, and also the fact that personality development, leadership training,
Yeah,
empathy training. Empathy
absolutely.
training is a major thing.
Yes.
I did read about these schools in tribal regions where young people are sent out together and they bring in, and which is based on a tribal, a particular community's model of learning. So they have to go out, they have to bring in the leaves or whatever, and they have to learn together, and they will be then guided through that process by the teacher, and they will be marked through that process. So that's empathy training.
Yeah.
So
So cool.
we can learn a lot from what we have, what you call the indigenous or the Indian knowledge system, but it has to be done with some kind of dynamic neutrality.
But tell me something. Maybe I'm old school. I don't know, or what is in my own personal experience in college. That I thought that the 3 years of undergrad did not really give me anything to really step into the real world. And when my children were growing up, all I said was, don't do just another undergrad. Just don't do a BCom honors or a Pol Science honors or history honors. Do something more specific, which can also, lead you. It is me as a parent who was thinking, is the I mean, being a principal of course, this amazing university, what do you think? Does undergrad now serve? Maybe things have changed over.
Well,
Does it really serve the
new
3 or 4 years?
coursework now is far more open to looking at various kinds of choice-based understandings. There's a whole list of skill enhancement courses, the list of value addition courses. Colleges have to be very focused on placement. They have to look at research and innovation. So there's a scope. But I still feel that the large part of that question is on people like us. How are we going to see it through? What kind of disruptive leadership can we provide?
Right.
Many of us are not equipped to do that
Yeah.
because we didn't study in that system. So I feel this is a time for people with some kind of a professional expertise to guide even academic or administrative leadership. So
Wow.
that would be a learning. And presently in University of Delhi, the vice chancellor who is in chair is very open. He's engineer by profession and he's sitting there. So there's an openness. I see that. And there's a lot that again percolates down to colleges like us.
Very
I told you
nice.
about the science of happiness. This is
Yes.
being set up by somebody who was with IIT Kanpur, and he's putting in a lot of money into this project of
Wow.
bringing in neuroscientists, bringing in social scientists to teach you the science of happiness, create a happiness or a mind lab. These are interesting things, but
So
every
cool.
college is now judged by its placements, an undergraduate college. So the
Wow.
scope is immense. Resources have to be mobilized, and we have to keep on developing the capacities of the teachers and bring in more collaborations with, let's say, somebody like you. We are also supposed to be doing podcasts, doing community
So
radio,
cool.
providing that training, having a media outreach. How are we going to do it
Yeah.
unless we create these collaborations? So there's again a focus on what they call having memorandum of understandings with various
Very nice.
organizations. The UGC talks about professors of practice,
Very
not
nice.
necessarily a PhD. So I think India is in a mode to understanding what went wrong, or if at all one can say that. But yes, if you'd ask me, you may have thought you didn't do anything in that period. But even the process of becoming who you are, or
Oh, of
raising the
course.
right questions, or having a conceptual knowledge base, we may not understand it, but we were doing it all the time.
And also a lot of bunking and a
Yes,
lot of
even all
going
of
out.
that.
Even that
Even
matters,
that
right? I
teaches
mean,
you
yeah.
how you negotiate
Coming
your
together.
relationships. So all of that is very important. And I think that space should also be there. Not everybody has to do something. Even that's, the spirit of idealness, just to be.
So I was in a girls' convent, okay? So I exactly knew that I don't want to go to a girls' college because I had it enough with,
Right.
during my, you can't do this, you can't do that, don't talk to boys, don't go out, don't whatever.
Yeah.
And then coming to a girls' college, I was like, oh no, I think the same will exist. Has everything changed over? I
See,
mean, or
we
is it
have
still?
tried to take this consensus in a matter of conversations with various students. Miranda House definitely doesn't want to go co-ed. The girls find it a very enabling space because again you have to see it sits in the University of Delhi, so the interaction with the opposite sex or getting, so all of that is there. We don't have curfew hours. This pretty much open-ended conversations about the hostels. They can do all of that. So they, and the young people themselves fought for those rights. So it's an enabling space. They do everything, pretty much everything themselves. They find it empowering. The all girls space. They feel that they are
No.
not. There's no
Wow.
male gaze. There's nobody to share that space with. I mean, they may have competitions between themselves. So, but they do find it empowering. At the same time, because they are part of a campus, they get to interact, they get to meet, and I think now the verdict on that is pretty much out, that interactions do happen in whatever ways they can. We haven't found that a constraint. I, on the other hand, went to a completely co-educational
Okay.
college and school. In fact, in my school, we were only 4 or 5 girls in a classroom to about 30 boys. So that was the ratio.
Oh,
So
wow.
I also used to think, how is it to be in a women's space? But in radical women's spaces where they are empowered and they are enabled, it doesn't feel like a so-called, kind of school, the convent or whatever, the kind of
The
structured,
strictness, yes,
strict,
also.
disciplined. So So there are two ways. One is that, like if you're a bunch of women and you're empowered and you're enjoying yourself, you really like that space to be only women.
Yeah.
But if it is only about strictness, then it becomes difficult.
Yeah. But it's amazing that, I would love to go back to college and figure out, because I also see women now completely different than what they were, at least at our time. Like, like I was talking to you, that how adaptable we were, because we didn't know any better way, let's put it this way.
Right.
But today's girls are very focused. They are very, like, their heads are on their shoulders, and they know that, it is an equal world that they have to create. And they are asking the right questions. So, in a community like that, I also heard you saying that, mostly women pull down women, and that's something that we hear all the time. And you're in a space where you experience women lifting each other up,
Yes.
and it's a completely different space. So, what do you want to say about that?
So just on that, we feel that, we were adaptable, but it is our generation and the generation before that which fought for the biggest battles.
Which is,
So if you remember, sexual harassment was very normalized during our times. And now it became a law because people of our generation and before that, they fought for those laws. Or if it was about dowry, it is that generation which fought for it. So pretty much the generation now is reaping the benefits of the women's movements before them. They are more into diversity now. The women's, even the word women has been questioned by them in so many ways. So they're looking at the larger
Absolutely,
diversity.
yeah.
So that's happening. But having said that, when it comes to women's solidarity, I have pretty much felt that women are each other's best friend. My women friends are my biggest, allies. They are the ones who celebrate me. So it's
nice.
all very beautiful. But this question about women being each other's enemies also is a very typically socially conditioned question. Men are also each other's enemies. Naturally, in a competitive sphere, anybody could be each other's enemies. And but that is never talked about. So you talk about women being each other's enemies, but when it comes to, let's say, property, brothers can kill each other.
Oh, yeah.
But we never say men are each other's enemies. But the biggest wars have been fought between men over property. So we don't
You're so
discuss
right,
that. So this is a social conditioning, because when you keep saying that women are going to support each other or these laws are for women, you might say that, but women are fighting amongst themselves. But this is not to take away from the fact that women can have agency to be against each other. And nobody should take that away. Women can be bad and they have a right to be bad. And there is a court of law if it is a question of a crime. So I don't think we should see women only as glorified supporters to each other. There will also be competition, and that's the way of the world. But to just, again, kind of stereotype them as each other's enemies is a problem. So active agency of women being enemies, not just to each other, but to the whole world, and that's possible. So many people will question us. When you say feminism is a good thing, they'll say, oh, but women are turning to be murderers, they are misusing the law. Yes, they will do that. Women are also people who will have active agency to do all of this, and there is a court of law, and there are rules and regulations, and they are supposed to follow it. But the larger context is one of discrimination. And they should not be discriminated because they are equal citizens. And I think that's now something we have to accept.
Yeah. No, while you were talking to me, I was also thinking that, that the beautiful transition has already started. At the same time, do you really think, so I'm introducing Second Act Awards for women, right? So I'm questioned by some male colleagues saying, why are you getting men out? Don't we do incredible stuff? What do you think of, recognizing women and what they're doing?
I think it's not something that is just for India. It's for the whole world that we must recognize women, because their obstacles were far more than men, because they have lived with some kind of privilege. They may not understand. Some men have done outstanding work, and maybe somebody should give them awards for that. And I'm sure they are getting those awards. But if you have decided to give awards to women and recognize it, you are doing it from an experiential stance.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to do that.
Yeah.
So let's say youth award or an award for elderly citizens. You can say, why only the youth? There's a reason for that, because that's the kind of category you look at. Many times I am also asked the same question, that do you think boys, I remember a young boy, he was very young, he was 7, he says, even I want to study in Miranda House, why won't I get the right? He was just one of the questions in a school. I said, of course you will have the right. He said, isn't it discriminatory that there are women's colleges? So, well, I do think that men should have the rights, but this is there for a historical disadvantage. And these spaces are enabling. And recognizing a woman, you are going to create a cascading effect on a larger, like the kind of work you do with the community.
Right.
Now, once I come to know your story, I am also intrigued by it. Okay, you're supporting these women also. So I think telling stories of successful women brings about a certain role model for other women. And so
Which is
I
true.
believe
Yeah.
that you should continue to do where your heart lies in. And maybe a nice, kind, intelligent woman or man may think of the other awards.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
who's stopping them,
Nobody's
right? Yeah,
stopping
nobody's
them.
stopping them. They can have
Right.
their awards.
Right.
Okay, so I want to know if today still, you have to define feminism. I mean, it's defined in various terms. People also call it activism in one way, which of course is not the true definition of feminism. How do you define
So
feminism?
for me, feminism is about equality. It's about creating gender equality. It's definitely not about being radicalizing to the effect that we don't want men. We are looking at equality between women and men and other genders. So for me, it's a simple thing about discrimination. There should be no discrimination, whether it is between classes, between castes, or between genders. So that's the simple definition for me.
But do you also feel that men still are, in a biased way, expected to still take the burden of running the whole show of the family?
Of course, and
So,
that's also about feminism. See, feminism talks about masculinity and femininity, and it says masculinity is also social conditioning. That men should protect the family, that they should not cry, that they should always be the strong, and that's why the men who are not like that are seen as outside the circle of
right.
so-called men. So patriarchy, which is the overarching framework, it also discriminates against men because it expects them to play a particular role, and that's a problem always. And
Right.
patriarchy may sometimes glorify women for being sacrificial, for being kind, and that's also a problem. It can be very benevolent to women. And sometimes you want somebody to open the door, pay your bill.
Yeah.
So feminism is a tough act for women too.
Yeah, true.
Because they also have to look at it. But at the same time, no one should take away the balance that human beings want to make in their own lives. I don't think that's the point of the way in which I see feminism. For me, feminism is in the Indian way. I see it not just from the Western perspective. I see it as syncretic feminism, like the way we are. India is more, if you take a look at bhakti, it's a bringing together of various values. So I see it like that. I don't think we need to shame
Yeah.
people
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
for doing
Absolutely.
what they are doing. I don't
Yeah.
think that's the point.
Since we are talking so much about women and women everywhere, I want to still know what are some messages that you want to give to women of today and women of yesterday?
Well, I mean, for the women of yesterday, I am sure they know what their messages are. They are getting it from the universe. But for the women of today and also the young women who are coming into their own today, I think it's important to keep a balance. And that balance is not necessarily one that women need to keep, but a balance which is focused on their own capabilities. So, looking at their health, their self-care, that's the biggest message I want to give. They should really invest in themselves. They should celebrate themselves, and this is not just a kind of a poster thing. It's really an important thing. And at my age, at 56, I wish I had paid more attention to my health when I was a 22-year-old or a 21-year-old. So that's a very important facet. The other thing is to look at your mental health, majorly focused on that, and to believe in your dreams and to work towards it, to have that purpose, and create a set of people who are there for your support, and to always be looking for that knowledge base. Enhance your knowledge base. It's very important to read, to write, to learn that knowledge base, and fight only on the negotiables. Do not, on the non-negotiables. If there are certain things which are, negotiable with your parents, there's no need to carry a flag for that. whatever is, non-negotiable, you fight. Say no to dowry. But if your parents want you to do a particular thing in a particular way, which is not necessarily impinging on your own rights, I think you should make space for that generation also.
Very
It is
well said.
important to keep that value system going. And these are sensitivity to care, to love.
So
And this has
nice.
nothing to do with traditional values per se. And there's nothing wrong in being open to traditional values, which are good for us, which have led us to a particular understanding of life. So I think it's that balance that one is looking for
Very
in
nice.
everything.
Like they say, know your battles, right?
Yes,
Don't
know your
fight every.
battles and be empathetic, be sensitive, not just to others but to yourself too.
Very nicely
And be
said.
authentic. I think you should just celebrate whoever you are. You don't have to really fit in. It's important to just recognize your own strengths and move forward with it.
So, what are your views on marriage now?
Well, I think marriage in India is a significant indicator of women's status. I don't believe one has to be married just for status. But I believe you need a loving companion at any point of time. And whether it's a friend or whether it's somebody that you are meeting on the way, and you believe in marriage and you want to create a strong base for yourself. It's an institution which has existed for so long. Who am I to say bad things about it? I'm in a happy marriage myself. Happy as in, but no one should be judged for taking a decision otherwise. I think to each to their own. Everybody should have equal rights, whether in a marriage or outside a marriage.
Very nice. But we do see rise of divorces. We do see
Yes.
rise of, spinsters and people not wanting to get married. So, I was reading an article sometime back. Somebody had written that most women in their 30s are either single or divorced or like literally like not wanting to have a companion. And there, in 10, 12, 15 years, then they will be all very feeling alone.
Okay. But why are these women saying no to marriage? Perhaps it's the men who now, we have to engage with men and boys and teach them about equality. If they're expecting the women that they will marry to be the same as they have seen in their structured patriarchal society, it's not going to happen. Women have already lived, tasted, and enjoyed equality. So men have to understand and be sensitive partners. I think it's important that when a woman is alone, a man is also equally alone. So the idea is not that the women are the ones, if they are going to say no to marriage. So, but however, I don't want to see it as in a utilitarian way. I believe it's important to engage with men and boys at this stage to teach them that equality and be more sensitive to their partner's needs. And always I think it's important to believe in love, in caring,
Yes.
in being sensitive to each other, and in romance. There's no reason to throw romance out of the window. So all of that. So if men and women and other genders find a loving, equal, sensitive partner, I'm sure they would like to be together, whether it is marriage or not.
Great answer. So, Professor Nanda, we have to wrap up in some time, but two very important questions still left. One, if I have to ask you, because without this podcast is incomplete, I have to ask you, if you had to define your second act, what is that?
My second act would be taking over an administrative role as principal, because that is something I'd always said no to. If anybody had asked me earlier, do you want to be the principal of a college? I'd have said, no, that's not the path. But I guess I did bring it. And I feel that in that second act, I was seen in the beginning as somebody who didn't fit the job, being too sensitive, too empathetic, not authoritarian enough. So I felt I brought something to that post by being more equal, by being more sensitive, by being non-hierarchical and yet assertive. And I feel that I seem to have lived that second act well, but it's always a learning process. But I have multiple second acts. So I'm also I have also brought out a book of letters with my best friend, which is celebrating solidarity amongst women and friendship. I'm taking out a book of poems. So I'm working on my creative part. I'm always hoping to create something new, something different, or maybe create an equal world for other women. So yes, in some sense, we all have multiple second acts, but this could be the second act which I'm living right now.
Very nice, very beautiful. Please inspire us more and more. I
Thank
think
you.
your story just keeps going on, and
Thank
I'll
you.
keep looking up to you, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Like I said, thank you for happening to me. You don't find people so easy like you in life, and I feel so honored, literally from my heart.
Thank you for happening to me too. And I look
No.
forward to more conversations and more collaborations.
Yes, absolutely. So incredible. I'm already like, getting excited and dreaming about it. मुझे लग रहा है जैसे कि universe has sent, at the right time.
So am I. So am I. And I'm
Yes.
sure our students will see you as a role model in so
Oh,
many sense
thank
because they are
you.
confused. So they'll know that there can be so many roles they can play.
Oh, absolutely. And what better to empower youth, and especially women youth of
Right.
India.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. So one thing before you go, we have this section called I'm sorry but not sorry. And I think as a woman, I'm sure there are lots of things that come to your mind when you say I'm sorry but I'm not sorry. I can tell you that I'm sorry for, of course, not adhering to any of the Venki rules when I was in college, always bunking and always being in cinemas and all of that. But I'm really not sorry for doing that because, we were a group of 21 and I just feel that was my, like, the family, everything, my universe, which made me who I am today. They were my really, and today also we meet sometimes, every quarter or whatever, and we're still the same.
That's wonderful. There's so much you learn outside the classroom. I always tell my students that there's much more that you learn from your friends. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm sorry, but not sorry. I mean, I would have ideally said being a feminist, but I'm not going to say that. I'm sorry, but not sorry for being accessible, for believing in democratic decision making,
so nice.
for believing in decentralization, because I'm always questioned on it. That why don't you take this decision just by yourself? And every time I think, okay, I'll do it. It's much easier, by the way. But then I decide, and all my learning on democratic decentralization, whether it is within the family or outside it. So thinking of a democracy of emotions, everybody should have a vote. So that's the idea, even in a room. So I am sorry, but not sorry for believing in democracy each time, every time.
And it's a really good answer, I have to say. So really, thanks for being accessible. Thanks for being such a wonderful, wonderful role model for so many women and empowering them in your beautiful way.
Thank you
And
so much.
we will do a part 2 of this series, on a beautiful book of yours or some poems that you're writing on your creative journey, maybe, your second act.
Thank you so much. It will be my pleasure. We look
In times
forward.
to come. So thank you for that empowering episode. It was so heartfelt to have Professor Nanda here. And any aspirants for Miranda House, what are you going to get if you apply to Miranda House and get there. Your life is going to be only looking upwards from there. So thank you for being on the podcast and signing off.